organizations that Erie needs, and one of the organizations that made it all happen for us to be here amongst the snow and the cold is the Erie Community Foundation. And we're so excited to have with us here President Karen Biloweth, Vice President Pat Herr, and Vice President Erin Fessler. Good to see you all. Welcome, welcome.
Great to see you.
Good to be
Happy
here,
New
Joel.
Year.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Tell us about 2025. All three of you weigh in on like your aspect. Pat, talk about the kind of the duties that you do at the ECF and how your year was, you know.
Well, that's a great question. I think my role at the Community Foundation is the Vice President of Community Impact and Leadership is really to strategize and help to operationalize our grant-making programs. So 2025 was a difficult year with a lot of federal upheavals and changes, instability. So along the lines of our general grant making, I thought we made a lot of progress. You know, we really had a great year utilization wise and put out a lot of great projects, and also had to tackle some impacts from instability. So we were doing a lot of resettlement work and working with the sort of consequences of some significant changes there. So, yeah.
Did that flow over to you, Karen, as far as when you're dealing with your board, dealing with kind of the on the donor side? Are they impacted by kind of policy?
Absolutely. You know, one of the important roles that the Community Foundation plays, and from a strategy perspective, you know, talking with our board is really asking them to support our ability to be responsive in the community. So when Pat is talking about the grants and operationalizing that rapid response fund, that really comes from the board leadership stepping up and saying, we can do this. And it was a reactivation of the COVID fund. So we have some muscle memory in doing that, but really, how do we step into our role as a community leader to, number one, understand what's happening? That was really important. And then, okay, how do we respond, react? And then related to the donors, how do we engage the community in this work? We'll talk more about it, but I was really pleased to see that our whole team was able to talk about the Rapid Response Fund in a way that inspired some significant gifts from individuals in the community.
And Erin, how about you, as you're kind of telling the story out there, how is it received in this realm of kind of uncertainty?
I think it's being received very well. And when you look back on 25, it's really when our strategic plan came to fruition, because we spent 2022, 23, and 24 planning to be where we are today. And so it was a vibrant year. And like Pat said, though, we did have some I don't want to say bumps in the road, but we had some challenges with a lot of changes going on with the refugee resettlement program. But then you look at Erie Gives, and it raised $11.3 million. It was the highest ever. So in its 15-year history, it raised $77.7 million. And that was a big year. So really what that says, to me at least, is that the community is picking up on how we are strategically doing our work and how we are involving all kinds of generations, and people are giving. They're philanthropic, and it really shows up on Erie Gives very visually, but then throughout the year with our donor advised funds and all the grant making that Pat's team does, it makes a statement to Erie that we say that we don't know the needs of the future, but we know we always need a strong community foundation.
It's remarkable to me. Again, I'm a historian. I mean, we're talking about a gift from the fellow that was involved with the Boston Star. I don't know if he started it, but he certainly was instrumental of making it successful. When you think about that kind of legacy to now, and even if you were tracking the last 5-10 years, from an outside perspective, it looks like this thing is growing. Like, really, is it almost exponential? I mean, how big is the ECF these days, Karen?
Since I've been here, we've been saying we're close to, or we're just around 400 million, but at the end of the year, we're actually closer to 500 million
That's
than
incredible.
400. So really incredible. And the growth, I don't know if I would say it's exponential, but it does increase in big jumps, and that's because people who give through their estate, which is how ECF started. Elijah Mack leaving his estate to the Erie community was the seed for the Erie Community Foundation. And we see over time that people who have been committed to this community and have left gifts through their estate are really able to make an impact, and then others are inspired. So it is a snowballing. I'll use a very timely reference.
Very good.
A snowballing effect. I will also note one of our big, and I think this is the Corey Community Foundation, one of our regional affiliates, but one of our big success stories from this year is they received a very significant estate gift from Barb and Ken Neckers, who were two of the founders of the Corey Community Foundation. So that's just goes back to what Erin was saying. It's just really people believe in their community. They love their community, and they believe in the Community Foundation to steward their generosity.
Well, and there's something to be said about you can give to one organization, or you can give to the foundation and be maybe more strategic about it. I don't know.
I think your point there is that the Community Foundation is really charged with the responsibility of making the right call when it comes to distributing our resources into the community. And we have a really time-tested process for doing that we've really been able to step on and improve over the last few years. So, yeah, I think that we're a good bet when it comes to managing the resources of donors and helping the community. I think people trust us.
Can I talk a little bit about your staff and the folks that are talking to these nonprofits? Because you get what I think was one of the coolest things in any of my interfaces with the folks that are helping the nonprofits write a grant or ask for help, is that there's a true amount of enthusiasm for, the projects. Like the staffers, are partners. They take ownership with the agency of saying, you know what, I know you want to have a bus for those to pick up those kids so they can come to your after school. Man, that's exciting. And there's real enthusiasm there. Talk about that.
Well, I think we are, as a social worker, I look at the nonprofits and their leadership as true partners. We learn as much from them as they certainly learn from us. And we really do our best to be the type of organization that they know they can trust with their ideas. And we're there to make them better, to sort of round them out at times, to make things more collaborative, to make their approaches more about reciprocity, not just what they get out, but what they put in. And I think that we've been really successful in building those partnerships and that trust. So yes, I think, we are extremely enthusiastic about the projects and look at them as, as I look at them as like my nephews. I mean, I really feel like.
Well, and sometimes you have to be a truth teller to your nephew, don't you?
Well, most certainly you do. In order to make things really, to make organizations or to help them stretch, to help them really identify that things have to be done in a consistent, transparent way.
Right.
I think we've been very successful in building our capacity to do that kind of work, and I think it shows up in the grants that we see.
Do you think the nonprofits are doing a good enough job of telling their story about the value that they bring? Because again, if you read the comments on Facebook, we're overrun with nonprofits. It's 42% of the tax rolls are off they're off the rolls, and there's a sense of a lack of understanding of how every every person in this community is impacted in a positive way from these nonprofits, whether whether in human services or animal services or education, healthcare. Talk about that, Karen.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We hear often that there are too many nonprofits, or there's redundancy, and I don't think people do stop and think about how many different types of nonprofits they are. So what does that even mean? We talk about that a lot during Erie Gives, and I think it's something that Erin says all the time, that a nonprofit touches you every day. You just might not realize it. So I always think about the interaction between the public sector, the private sector, and the nonprofit sector, and you need all three. So it's really telling the story better. But also the individual nonprofits are so focused often on their work and the people that they're supporting that they don't have the time or the staff to tell the stories. And we hope that, especially through Erie Gives, we help give them a platform and that they use it for the rest of the year. Like, continue to reach out to these donors and talk about your work, because we see from the results that when you tell the story well, people will give to you.
Erin, follow up on that, because the Erie Community Foundation has put a lot of foundational effort into being able to be, for these nonprofits to be better storytellers. I'm thinking about the Erie Gives website and the ability to put up your YouTube and to have your match goals and all that stuff. Can you talk about that? Yeah.
Right. So like Karen said, a lot of them don't have the capacity or the advertising dollars to tell their story. So that's what Erie Gives does. And also what's important about Erie Gives, yes, the numbers are amazing. 11.3 million is amazing. But what's more important is the donors that become new to a nonprofit and the relationships that are built, because Erie Gives opens up the door, and from that point on, the nonprofit stewards that donor and finds out what matters to them. And so long after Erie Gives is over, now they have a relationship with somebody, and that person may want to leave their estate to that nonprofit. So there's a domino effect that I think sometimes we lose sight of how many relationships are built on Erie Gives.
We're talking to our friends from the Erie Community Foundation. Stay with us. More ahead on Talk Erie. We're talking about success and making things happen in our community through the efforts of the Erie Community Foundation. Erin Fessler, Karen Biloweth, Herr. Erin, let's talk about this fourth quarter. The headline: Erie Community Foundation awards more than $4.6 million to support immediate needs and long-term community impact. So this is kind of like your fourth quarter report, right?
Right. And then come this June, we'll have a full report of 2025's work.
Okay.
But the fourth quarter is always one of the most amazing quarters because it's the end of the year and that's a time of Christmas, Thanksgiving, and people are giving back, and they use their donor advised fund to do that. And so when we break that out of 4.6 million, about 3.8 million was from those donor advised funds.
Wow.
And then we do the Helping Today, Shaping Tomorrow projects, which Pat has talked to you about. And so a little over 345,000 went to 14 local nonprofits for Helping Today, and then almost $500,000 went to 5 local nonprofits. And for me, it was kind of like going down memory lane, and we have these things listed on our website so you can see where the grants went. But when I say I went down memory lane, one of the grants, a Helping Today grant, was to the Community Blood Bank to the tune of $20,000, and that was to support their new blood mobile. And I started my career at the blood bank.
I remember.
Do you remember those days? Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And I remember when we had one blood mobile, and now they have a few of them because they're going out into the county and really serving a lot of donors, blood donors, to give to the hospitals and the cancer centers. So that was exciting, and they still have the same logo that we created X amount of years ago. But that was fun. And then you look at our Shaping Tomorrow. We had a story done yesterday on the YMCA, and they received over $100,000 to go to the recidivism. Pat and I were trying to talk about that word. I always stumble on it, but that's a program that helps men and women who are coming out of the jail system and need a second chance. And so that's a Shaping Tomorrow grant. So Helping Today is more immediate. We need a new van. Mm-hmm. Shaping Tomorrow is, boy, we want to transform some lives. So that's what is pretty cool. That happens every quarter at the Erie Community Foundation, but December is always a big one.
Yeah, and again, what's cool is too that the Community Foundation isn't dependent on to do the whole thing. It's a partner with the efforts of, let's say, the blood bank to say, okay, we need this $250,000 van. Here's help to it. Or however I don't.
A Helping Today grant.
Yeah,
You're right.
Helping
20,000.
Today. Yeah.
Right.
Here, let's help it along.
Right.
But there's also some things with these, tomorrow grants.
Shaping
Tomorrow. I mean, you do make a pretty big bet on those projects because they're multi-year projects. Talk about that.
In
Pat.
some cases, they're multi-year projects. In a lot of cases, they are. But the Shaping Tomorrow project or programs are mid-range grant programs. So it's really where we're encouraging cross-sector collaborations and evidence-based best practice interventions. And we're really looking at partnerships. As I mentioned before, we're really looking at reciprocity. And to your point, yes, we're trying to make systemic changes that can last and changes that can be built into. So we're looking at projects that focus on sustainability. We're really interested in the planning of those organizations, how they align with our priorities, sort of scope and impact. So it's a pretty rigorous process.
Sure.
And we've been very successful in sort of building the capacity of organizations to measure up to what we're looking for. And I think we're going to see, as we've enhanced our ability to sort of collect data on these projects, I think we're going to really start to be able to see and report really what the differences are that were being made. We were challenged by our board chair a few years ago to show us the difference. And we've really worked hard at showing what the changes are that are being made with these types of projects.
Is there, Karen, like a list of priorities? Does it ebb and flow as far as where the community is at? I think about, like, here on the radio show, we probably have 3 or 4 main topics that we always want to come back to: homelessness, workforce, the child care issue, housing in general is massive. Is that kind of a target for the for the community foundation too? Things like that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And this is something I think our board, especially through our strategic planning process and many discussions that Pat and I and board members have had, the community foundation is broadly focused. And that's true of every community foundation because you have both all of the donors that you work with who have different interests and then all of the community needs. And we try to match interests and needs. So we have to have a broader viewpoint than some other types of foundations. And we want to make sure that anything that we choose as a priority is both community informed and data informed. So what I mean by that is we can look at the data and that tells us, okay, there's all these different needs in the community, but what's most important to that neighborhood or to this group that is working on this issue? So instead of picking 3 priority areas like issue focused,
Right.
what we've made a commitment to is making sure that we are listening and we're involved in cross-sector and collaborative partnerships that will tell us what are the things that the community has shared priorities on. That's why we're working so closely with Infinite Erie on community and economic development, because that is the entity that is bringing the stakeholders together, determining the priorities, so we can say, okay, we're going to support permanent supportive housing. We've been working with Housing First Erie for a couple of years based on Infinite Erie bringing the community together and saying that's a priority.
I was going to say, you're right in the room where it happens to have those conversations and say,
Right.
okay, well, maybe we can, put some help toward that. When you talk about show us the results, do the equations work out? Are we starting to see that?
Well,
Especially as you're more involved in these big conversations.
I think what we're doing is making it easier for our nonprofit partners to understand what it is that we mean when we're talking about results. So, not to get technical, but I think everybody's heard of a logic model. And we kind of take the middle of that logic model. So objectives, activities, and outputs, they're all measurable. And they really articulate for our donors, for our staff, what it is that we're focusing on and what it is that we can measure. So when we use that language with our nonprofits, they've become much more comfortable with what that's all about. And it helps to shape in a sort of customized fashion consistency among the grants that we see.
That's terrific. We're talking to our friends from the Erie Community Foundation. It's time for news here on Talk Erie. Stay with us. More ahead on your radio for a Wednesday. How's it going? Happy Wednesday to you. It's the Joel Natale Show live from our Kingdom Financial Group studio here at 5th and State in the midst of all of the revival, the renaissance of Erie, and a huge player in that renaissance is the Erie Community Foundation. Karen Biloweth, Pat Herr, Erin, Fessler are with us here, and it's remarkable to see, kind of the renaissance of Erie. Each in your perspectives, how are you seeing that? Let's say in the nonprofits that you're talking to, are they catching the fever, if you will?
I think they want to be part of it. I think that nonprofits are, really tasked with some of the most difficult work that gets done, and I think it's hard to see the forest through the trees sometimes. And I think we spend a lot of time. We're really fortunate to have Erin Fessler to help us tell stories and to get the word out on what our nonprofit partners are up to, because a lot of times they don't, and I think Karen alluded to this, they don't always have the resources or the time to tell the stories or even to appreciate them when they do have the time. So we really put a lot of effort into putting Erin onto our stories, and really, we're trying to get better at telling those stories, not only from a grant perspective, but really from an impact perspective. So I've just seen, I know that the nonprofit community in general is really focused on making a difference. And I think that they are enjoying Erie's development and renaissance as much as anybody, and I think they probably feel a little bit more tied to it than the average person.
Karen, talk about that synergy between, again, you mentioned the three-legged stool, if you will, of the private sector, the nonprofit sector, public sector, and so on. But you're involved in these conversations where people are making major decisions or making major investments in things. And what are you seeing with this newfound energy in Erie?
I think that what we all see is the physical transformation. So that's what makes the headlines, not the small stories, but what's happening with the building and with EDDC and what will happen on the waterfront. One of the things that I think continues to happen is this growing momentum, but it's the increased commitment of and collaboration of those three legs of the stool. So the public sector, the philanthropic sector, and the private sector coming together to say, we have a lot of good things going, but we need to continue this momentum to make it happen. And I know that recently Infinite Erie and others have been working to talk about the creation of a waterfront plan, and there's the downtown plan, and all of these things are starting to come together. And to me, that is in some ways really boring, because it's like nobody likes the planning, but it's so exciting to see and to see it happening, because that's going to be what creates Erie's future. And I'm starting to hear the same language out there. Okay. I was at at Mayor Devlin's inauguration, and she talked about Erie's next chapter. And I think a lot of people are building on that same momentum and narrative.
Erin, weigh in on that, yeah.
And I would parlay off of that donors are seeing it too. And people who have lived here and moved away come back and they see it. And so, for example, a donor story that we'll be sharing in our annual report is the Binzile family. And the Binzile family had 8 children. One was tragically killed in a car accident in 1976. And then these 7 other children have all moved out of Erie. They're out west in Colorado, Montana, some are in Buffalo, Pittsburgh. They've scattered across the 7 children have scattered across the United States. But their parents, Ed and Dolores Binzile, who raised their children here, and Dolores worked at the hospital and Ed worked at AMSCO, they established a fund at the Erie Community Foundation. They both have since passed away, and now the 7 Binzile children are giving back to the Erie community through their parents' fund, and they're adding to it. And they make a family vote every year on who they want to use their donor advised fund for which nonprofit. So like one of the daughters is a teacher in Pittsburgh. Well, she liked to give to Hooked on Books in Erie. Another one of their children does forestry work out west, and he wanted to give to the lighthouse in the peninsula. So they're connecting their passions, and none of the grandchildren grew up here, but they're learning about Erie. So that's fun to see and watch when people who grew up here come back and they say, wow, look at EDDC and what's going on downtown. And they see, I mean, look at your Talk Erie radio station right here in the heart of it. So this wasn't all here when the Binzel kids were growing up.
Sure. Do you get a sense that, and maybe a leading indicator is Erie Gives, that you don't have that kind of growth unless people are bullish on the community, that the money is going to go is not going void. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I like the word bullish, bullish on our Erie community.
Yeah.
I have always said this, that the secret sauce for community foundations is that you have to have a community where people love their community. That's like the number one thing. And
have you ever encountered somebody that, geez, they just don't like us that much? They're just not into you, you know? So communities that are not into themselves.
I think there are a lot of communities that don't have the same sense of maybe pride or belonging that people in Erie do, or and maybe it comes with bigger communities. You just aren't able to see the impact that you can have as an individual or as a donor. But there is some combination of that passion for community and confidence, bullishness.
Yes, yeah.
That you can be a part of the difference. Now, that isn't to say that we can sometimes be our own worst enemies if we're not sharing the good news beyond our borders, but I think we do a really good job in Erie of building on the momentum.
I think it's important that we talk about like how we talk about Erie Gives, $25 makes you a philanthropist, but you could actually start a donor advised funds. What's the low end? What is it? 25 grand or
10,000.
10,000.
Scholarships are 25,000.
And scholarships are 25. I mean, that's very accessible for a lot of folks to be able to like have a lasting legacy. You know, I mean, an average Joe might have an estate worth $150,000, maybe $300,000 as a guy that worked at GE.
Sure.
I mean, it happens every day.
Right. So Bill Schuster is a good example of that. The Schuster Library.
Warren Radio, right?
Right, absolutely. So his estate was worth $1.2 million when he passed away in 1998. We still have his original $1.2 million, but we've given away to his favorite. It started off favorite 14 nonprofits, and now it's down to 13 because one folded, and that's the stewardship of a community foundation. But every year we give away grants to all of his favorite nonprofits, and he's been gone since 1998.
And you haven't touched the principal.
And we still have the principal because we invest it. And I explain it to my friends and family, like, if you have $10,000 and you want to give to a nonprofit, that's great. If you give it to them today, they're going to spend it, they're going to use it wisely. If you establish a fund, a named fund, you can name it after your family, at the Erie Community Foundation, our job is to invest it and make money for you. And every year you give away 4% of your principal or your fund, and then we maintain the principal.
Fantastic. Yeah.
So it's like a checking savings.
Yeah.
Checking goes out the door, savings builds for the future in perpetuity.
It just seems like a really tremendous way. We would be remiss to say, if you are knocking on the door of 70 and a half, right? You need to start thinking about giving through your, what is it?
Your required minimum distribution from your IRA.
I knew Erin would have it, right? I mean, yeah, you utilize your IRA to do some major work for you.
Right, then you don't have to pay taxes on it because you've given it to your favorite nonprofits.
All right, I've got about 10 minutes. Let's talk about what's ahead in 2026. Pat, what's your feeling, as far as some of the projects that are going on and, some of the policy that's happening here? Where's Erie headed in philanthropy as you see it?
Well, I think we have a number of projects that are in the hopper, if you will. Really a broad range. We're really focused on workforce and, trying to help organizations create opportunities, both pipelines and actual jobs. So that's going to be a big part of this year. I think we'll continue.
How young do you start? Like, I was just on a 90-minute meeting with Erie Together, talking about, again, they're amazing, but it's all about the career pathways for the young kids. And some of them are saying you got to start in middle school almost to have exposure to opportunities. It's
I think that
amazing.
Career mindset is starting earlier than we used to think of it.
Yeah.
I think in many ways, elementary schools have been sort of engaged now in building career aptitude. It's crazy, but I think in a lot of ways schools have become more focused on career prep. So, we're trying to help that. We're trying to help that along, trying to build those pipelines on the front end and the back end.
It really waves beyond. It gets rid of despair. The worst thing you could have is that a 19-year-old out of high school and no direction.
I mean, didn't that used to be the way? Being 19, having no direction? Yes.
Well, we want to help that along.
And unfortunately, we don't have time for that nowadays. Kids are, I think, more pressured than ever. And, we're part of that process.
That's amazing. That seems right on the pulse. It really does.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we are responsive to community needs, and strengthening nonprofits is really about listening to what it is that they're working on and then paying attention to what the community's telling us and where the gaps are.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of really willing partners, and we've been really happy with the way things are going. I think 2025 is going to be, or 2026 is going to be a challenging year. But I really feel like we have some true engagement with some organizations that have traditionally been partners with us, but are kind of stepping up their game. So rather than, put too much information out there right now, I think it's a wait and see.
Okay. Yeah, talk about, you guys really entered into the resettlement thing. Is that settled, or is this going to be a project now for multiple years, considering what's happening nationally, you think?
Well, when we went into the work, we really were focused on responding to the immediate need, knowing that the refugee resettlement community was really important to Erie's economy, important to, these are our friends and neighbors. So really wanting to be able to put a stopgap out there, continue service for the 5,000 refugee new Americans in our community. Now, and Pat knows much more about this than I do because he's been talking with all of the organizations, as they anticipate the funding not being renewed, at least in the short term. How do we respond as a community network of providers? So for us at the Community Foundation, this will become likely part of our Helping Today, Shaping Tomorrow grants, because those needs will be rippled throughout the community, and we'll continue to keep keep in the conversation so we can help with the response. But it's already moved beyond the refugee resettlement community, because I'm sure you followed the news around hunger and food insecurity, and the next thing might be housing or Medicare. So we're trying to figure out what's the best use of those funds, but really how does it become part of our normal business process?
Yeah. So basically, as policy changes, and you deal with the government a bit, as policy changes on the governmental level, the Community Foundation is seeing where they could be a gap filler, at least in the short term.
Sure, and we have some experience in this because when COVID broke out in 2020, 2020, we came up with a rapid response fund to those needs, and that was food insecurity, childcare, workforce. So we were quickly able to partner with other leaders in the community and have a over $700,000 fund. So this was very similar. There was a need that just we weren't expecting that in 2024, and then all of a sudden there was a need. We weren't expecting COVID in 2019, and there was a need. And so when you have a strong community foundation, right there, we make a difference. And every donor who's a part of the foundation is a part of that work.
And when you hear me do the stock report and we see green, that helps the community foundation too. It helps all of us.
That's right. Well,
go ahead.
One of the things you asked about 2025, that was our 90th anniversary. Wow. And so last year at the annual meeting, Karen put a challenge out to the community that we would like to raise $100 million by our 100th anniversary, which would be in 2035. And wow, that sounds far away. No, blink and it'll be here.
Yes.
And so what that type of fund of $100 million, that would be a part of Pat's budget. And so the work he's doing now will be on steroids 10 years from now. Right. with that kind of a challenge put out to the community. And we're on track, I think, that we could reach that goal pretty easily because we talk on shows like this and the media tells our story and people learn about it. So learn about the foundation.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
So headline for 2026, what would it be?
Boy, don't make me go first.
We'll go with Erin. She's the wordsmith, right?
Well, I would say we're kind of on steroids now because of the work that we're doing, but there's ways to get involved in the foundation, whether it's through one of our regional affiliates in Corey, Union City, Findlay Lake, or Northeast. But then there's our 3 affinity funds: right. Mm-hmm. The Erie Women's Fund, the Emerging Erie Fund, and the LGBT Fund. Mm-hmm. So really, I mean, we've been beating this drum for a while, but if you really take a good look at what matters to you and how you can connect with the foundation, it's all there for you. And 2026 might be the year to explore how you want to make a difference in your community. I think. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
What are your thoughts, Karen? I mean, headline?
I would say Erin really teed that up, because in order to reach the $100 million goal in 10 years, and that's $100 million for our community impact fund. So those are the funds that enable us to do everything we've talked about today. But we can't do that without the engagement of different communities, different geographies, and all of the things Erin just talked about are the ways that we do that. So we, as a community foundation, need to continue to evolve and stay relevant in the community so that we engage more and more people in our work.
I think I think you would agree that having agency go to the younger demographics is going to be huge.
Yep.
for like you say, the emerging Erie Fund of, like, you know what, I have the capacity to be a solution.
That's right.
Wow.
Sure.
You get the last one. I put you on the last.
Well, I was thinking as we were talking earlier that Erie has a real tendency to be hard on itself. I think I think our parents were that way. I think our weather makes us that way, especially this time of year. Hardy, I think is a word I like to hear a lot. But I think that it's important that people pay attention and look for the good news. So I think there's a lot of great things happening in Erie, and I think a headline for 2026 might be pay attention to the good news. I think there's a lot of good things out there. I think there are a lot of organizations working hard and working together. So I think that's worth talking about and worth listening for.
Shout it from the rooftops.
For sure.
There's a lot going good in Erie, Pennsylvania.
And
wow.
I think it's important to note that Karen, Pat, and I have colleagues across community foundations across the country. And the Erie Community Foundation is rare in the sense that we have a lot of unrestricted funds, and that's what the $100 million would be. There's some community foundations, they only have donor advised funds, and they can't do the transformational work that our team is able to do because we have unrestricted funds at the foundation. So hopefully in 2035, that $100 million will be unrestricted and make a greater impact than we're making today.
Well, can I say thank you for being the stewards that you are? Because I think it's just incredible to hear these stories. And, I'm looking at the Site Center, diabetes prevention program. How important, of course, how important that is.
Yes.
But, I mean, we're overrun with these kinds of things. We have a problem. The ECF is part of the solution. And I just... hats off to you all. Karen Biloweth, the president, Erin Fessler, vice president, Pat Herr, vice president. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It is 5 in front of 5.